Hi, y'all. It's Bridget Cutshaw with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Kent Sanders, and he was a professor, writing professor, and then he became a professional writer, but he makes a living off his writing now. Can you say hi, Kent?
Hey, how's it going, Bridget? Thanks for having me.
Good. I think his story is fascinating to me because he was from my understanding, professor for almost 17 years. And then I think within was it a year ago? I guess you can share more about that. What prompted you to shift away from being a professor is so cool, by the way.
It sounds cool until you do it for a living, and then it becomes the most routine thing in the world, it seems like.
I bet, right. And it's just in general, we have all these rules you got to follow. And I think maybe is that what prompted you to go full-time writing? I'm just curious.
Well, there were probably a lot of things that prompted me to want to create my own business. One of them was income. I mean, I could be all, I could talk about, faith or creativity or whatever elements, but honestly, one of the driving things was I wanted more income and I wanted to be able to set my own income. That was really important to me. For a long time, I was a pastor before that. So both in the church ministry and in the higher education worlds, typically people don't really make that much. Those are professions, there's certain professions that people go into where you do it because you have kind of a sense of calling of some type. Now, I think a lot of people have jobs where they feel some sense of calling or mission or purpose. Hopefully everybody feels that. But in those particular fields, teaching and pastoral ministry, those are two careers where those tend to be driven, people's decision to go into those tend to be driven by, I really feel like I have a mission in this of some type. The problem with those fields is that normally they're not very well paid. So I just got tired of that after doing it for a real long time. And, I wanted to be able to drive cars that weren't 15 or 20 years old and be able to make home repairs and take some decent vacations and all that kind of stuff. So I just decided I was going to create my own business and knew nothing about it, but I just took some steps toward doing that. And I can go into whatever you want to related to that, or really just whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, I think that is just fascinating. I've heard that too. My sister, she's not a professor, but she's a school teacher. She teaches middle school, right? And so they have a different aspect they got to deal with, at least with
Yeah.
college students, having to deal with the parents. I mean, it
Well,
sounds
most of the time. Yeah.
most of the time, right.
Most of the time. Yeah.
It's a needed thing, but I think I shouldn't say society, but our culture is changing, right? And I think that's probably another part that drove you to that. And you have a teenage son too.
Yes.
And so you want to be a good, role model for him.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's very inspiring what you're doing, because a lot of people think about, especially writing creativity, or I've always wanted to be that, right? But when I was younger, told no, you got to make money, right? But then
Yeah.
at the same time, yeah, I agree with that. But as I've aged, I'm like you, I want to have control of my life.
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
think being in a university system, there's too many rules probably. I mean, that's just
That never bothered me that much,
oh,
though.
that's good.
Part of the appeal, in fact, it's funny that we're talking about this. Literally 2 or 3 days ago, I was telling my wife, I said, there are honestly a lot of things that I miss about teaching full time. Now, I don't miss like really, really low income kind of a deal. That's the one aspect I don't miss. But one thing that I do miss is I miss the routine and the schedule of it. I'm a highly scheduled kind of a person. Not in an irritating way, but like I tell my wife sometimes, there's never a day that goes by where I wake up and I don't have an idea of what I want to do that day. I don't really like surprises. I don't like last minute. I'm not saying I'm not spontaneous sometimes, but I kind of am a person who likes schedules and planning. And the academic life is a good place for somebody who likes that kind of a life, because somebody else is telling you what your class schedule is going to be. You have meetings you go to. At our school, we had chapel services that we would have to go to. And there's an ebb and flow to the academic year that is honestly really reassuring, because you know that even if any particular semester you have a group of students that maybe you don't connect with as much, or you're teaching a class or two you don't really enjoy that much, it's only going to last for like 4 months or something. So it's going to be over. Then you're going to have summer break. Then you're going to kick back off again in the fall. And there's something about that routine that honestly I really miss, kind of the ebb and flow of it. When you have your own business, you're the one who's setting the schedule. And if you wake up and look at your calendar at the beginning of the week and you're like, oh man, I don't really like however this is situated. Well, you're the only person that you have to blame for that.
Right.
So there is an aspect of the academic world where it kind of takes away your own responsibility because somebody else is making all those decisions for you for the most part. And that's kind of reassuring, if you want to sit back and just kind of coast along in life, higher education is a great place to do that in some sense, because you're letting everybody else sort of determine your whole life.
Right. That's kind of why I have a corporate background and I had a schedule like that. But like I said, it was as I've aged and my kids are adults, I'm like, I want to be on Bridget's schedule, but there's pros and cons, guys.
Exactly.
There's pros and cons of both sides. And you have to figure out what's most important to you, right?
You do.
And for me, I was thrust into independent world because of layoffs. And I was one of them. That was my thing, right? So that's why I'm like, what do I do next? And I had clients who convinced me, who trust, that was the, you needed that confidence and then like you said, you started your writing side on the side, right? And that's kind of how you kind of doing it at the same time, which helped you.
I did. So kind of how this all started was back in, there was really two things that happened right around the same time that pushed me into this a bit. One was that I just wanted to start a little bit of a side business. I had spent a lot of time around, and I was listening to a lot of podcasts at the time of 3 or 4 writers. One of those was Jeff Goins, who's written some fantastic books. One of those was Dan Miller who wrote 48 Days to the Work You Love. One was Michael Hyatt, who's been a business leader for a long time. And there were a number of people that I was listening to a lot and reading their stuff a lot at that time that really inspired me to want to start to make money as a writer. And I thought, well, I'm a teacher, I've been a pastor. Surely, if other people can make money doing this, surely I can figure out how to do it. So I got connected with a friend of mine who was a podcast producer, actually still is, and he invited me to write podcast show notes for one of his clients. It was a paid gig. It didn't really pay that much, but it was something that was like a proof of concept that, oh, somebody values me enough to where they would pay me for my writing work. This is pretty cool. So I did that, and over the years picked up different kinds of clients, and then that transitioned more into ghostwriting over the last couple of years. The other thing that happened around that same time, around 2015, was that we had I don't know any other way to say it except there were some controversies at our school where several of our faculty members were kind of getting into some issues with people affiliated with our school and with each other. And there was just a lot of, sometimes in an organization, you have things kind of come to a head and you have like several crises happen at once that don't really seem related, but really they're all kind of stemming from the same issues. That happened at our school. I wasn't involved in any of that stuff, but several people actually left at the same time. And it was a small college, so it was kind of a really bad deal for our school, to be honest with you. And I saw a lot of people either leave our school voluntarily, or they were fired, or contracts weren't renewed. And it was really heartbreaking because I was friends with all those people. And that made me determine that if and when I ever transitioned into my own business, that I would do it on my own time and I would do it on my own terms. And so it was right around that same time that I just determined I'm going to start building a side hustle. It's going to take me a few years to build it up and figure out what I'm doing. But I vowed to never be caught in that kind of a situation where somebody else would tell me that my employment was done or something like that. So I just started building it on the side. And, I've had a lot of conversations with people the last year or so as I've made the transition into full-time ghostwriting, who have asked me about this. And it sounds kind of dramatic and it sounds really awesome looking at it from the outside. It's like, oh, wow, how did you left a job into doing your own business? But they didn't see all the 5 or 6 years of work that went into that. People didn't see the late nights and the early mornings and the weekends blogging and podcasting and doing client work. And I mean, you know what it's like. All the stuff nobody sees that goes into it. That's really what it took for me. Now, I'm kind of a slow learner, and I probably could have done it a lot faster if I would have just been smarter about it. But I wasn't. But it did work over time. So yeah, I think if you want to do something like that, you can do it. You just have to start and figure it out and be okay with making a bunch of mistakes and just
Right.
stick with it.
I think a lot of people they talk about they're afraid to write or put a book out there because there's just a huge fear factor.
There is.
And right, I've been in that business for a long time, but more on the other side. And so it took me a while to do it as well. And I had my sons convince me to start blogging. It was my sons, not
Wow, that's cool.
right.
When your kids are encouraging, that's cool.
Right. But it shows you how well we're bonded. And I was being kind of honest with them, but they saw like mom needs this. Right. And
yeah.
but I blogged when I was employed. Right. But I wasn't making money on it. Right. But you can make money, and you're a great example of how you grew it. And I think it's okay to go slow because you probably, I would assume, made fewer mistakes than if you went really fast.
Well, I don't know. I would have gone a lot faster if I would have just listened to my wife, honestly. And I say that kind of jokingly, but I'm not really joking, because our whole marriage, she knew that I wanted to write. And she had encouraged me to write. I mean, ever since we got married, really, even ever since she knew me as a college student, she knew that was a goal of mine. But I just never had the courage to do it. And really, honestly, up until probably 2010 or so, I'm just guesstimating, it really wasn't nearly as easy as it is these days to self-publish and to get, blogging and all that stuff.
Right.
So if I would have just stuck with the writing thing, it would have gone a lot faster. But at the same time that I was doing that client work, I also was trying some other side hustles. And I don't know why. I think I was just afraid to lean into the writing. So there was one summer that I spent literally the whole summer learning Amazon FBA, which is fulfillment by Amazon, for those who don't know what that is, where you send stuff to Amazon, you have to list it, they sell it, you get a cut of that. And that was a whole wasted summer because my whole business tanked. I was terrible at it, didn't know what I was doing. And I actually ended up having to pay Amazon to destroy my inventory because they were going to start charging me to store it unless it's sold. So they basically said, either you pay us to ship the books back to you. This was like 1,000 books. Or you can pay us to destroy it, or I forget, or, pay us to continue to store it. And destroying them was the cheapest option. I mean, talk about insane, paying a company to destroy your inventory. But I did that, and I learned that I did not want to do that for a business. There was another summer where I tried network marketing. I was terrible at that. I had no business doing it. So I took a lot of really dumb side roads. And then finally I came back to the writing thing because that's my main marketable skill. So I think when the universe or your spouse or people that you love and trust are trying to tell you something in your life, probably it's best to listen.
I think it's awesome that your wife has been very supportive the whole time, and she knows you.
Yeah.
And so she let you go off a little bit, off course a little bit. But I think that's how you
she did,
learn.
but it comes up regularly in discussions.
Well, that's how you learn, though. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Right. And that's why I think people are, I don't know. It's just so many things out there now, a lot of information. And I think that freaks people out too. And I think it helps to be around other people who have similar goals like you, and that'll help you figure it out. And I mean,
totally.
That's just my opinion. And I never would have been doing my own business without my clients saying, we trust you. Right? You don't,
exactly.
And otherwise I wouldn't have done it. Right. I was looking for another corporate job because that's what my brain was. And I thought, that's why I'm going to go be a professor one day, but it didn't. So there's a reason it didn't work out, Ken. Right?
Yeah. Don't go into higher ed unless you, because the whole industry is really going through a lot of changes right now.
Right. And back in the day, it was considered sexy. I mean, it was back in the day. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, it's still a fun type of work.
Yes.
Part-time.
Right. But like you said, they're having financial problems. I think it's maybe because of what's going on with technology has a lot to do with it. You
Yeah,
think?
there's a whole bunch of things I think involved in it. I mean, gosh, one of the reasons, and I'm just being totally transparent, one of the several reasons why I wanted to transition away from higher ed is because I really started to have an ethical issue with the idea of recruiting students to colleges, knowing that, and I'm not talking about necessarily just our school, but a lot of schools. If you look at how students come in and they take certain degrees, then they graduate, they don't end up in those fields most of the time. And I really have an ethical problem with that whole system, because here you're basically trying to market to kids and saying, hey, come to our school and you can get this or that degree. You're going to go into debt, maybe 50 or 100 grand or much more in some cases, and you're going to graduate, but you're probably not even going to work that kind of a job. You're probably going to work at Starbucks and live at home for a few years. And that
Right.
sounds harsh, but that's just what I saw. And I started to have real ethical, a real ethical conflict about it, to be honest with you.
Right.
And it was to the point where I could no longer feel like I could speak with integrity about the value of higher education. And I'm not saying higher ed is bad. I think in many cases, it still is a good value. But for most students, I don't know that the best decision is to go right from high school into college. If you don't have a super clear idea about what you want to do, and you need to look at the value proposition. I mean, is what you're spending as far as time and opportunity cost and money, are you going to get that back within a reasonable amount of time based on what the college is promising?
Right. My younger son went through kind of what you're saying. He wasn't, he was going to go to school for engineering or something. He's like, he didn't say screw this, but he's now did training with like full stack development, because he's always been really good with that. He's making really good money. He didn't have to go pay for 4 or 5 years of college, but we were like shocked because we're from that. But we're like, it's him, it's not us, and he's doing it. But so we supported him on that decision, and I think that's what people are trying to figure out. And I think tech schools are really helpful. They're probably,
the trades are great. I mean, my goodness, go to a trade school and learn a practical trade in a year or two or whatever time it takes, and learn an actual marketable skill where you're not taking all these classes that are completely irrelevant to your actual life.
And that's what he saw. He goes, this is so stupid, Mom. I took this in high school. Like, he goes, why am I doing
that's another big problem is there's just a repetition of high school curriculum a lot of times in your first, especially when it comes to college gen ed.
Yes, it's just amazing. And this is another example of people say you have to have a plan and a read, but you also need to listen to your instincts. I'm one of those people. That's just me. You have your gut feeling. You don't go 100% that way, but you have to listen to it. And then you can figure out a plan, just like you and your wife knew. You wanted to write, and look at you, Kent. You have a great business, and you also have a community too. What's it called?
I do. So there's really two sides to my business. One is I do ghostwriting for clients. Typically, I focus on inspirational memoir type of books, business nonfiction. I actually just took on a client literally last week. I signed a client that's a very specialty kind of a research-driven book. I've never done this kind of a book before, so I actually hired a writer to help me with it, who really is more of a researcher. And I'm really fascinated by the process of how this is going to go, because I can see doing more books like this. I just this past Friday talked to a prospective client who just got her PhD. She was very high up in a corporate type of a job, and she's wanting to turn her dissertation into a book. So I can see that as a potential avenue for some projects that are really interesting. But that's one side of my business, is the client work. And the other side of it is where I train and help authors. So I have a podcast called The Daily Writer, which I've done for about 1.5 years now. It's a daily show. And yes, it does take a lot of work to put it together because it's every day there's an episode that comes out. But then I also have a membership community for writers called the Daily Writer Community, which is it's really a very simple kind of a group. We do calls on Wednesdays. We do a 3-hour writing sprint where you come and we check in with each other at the top of the hour for those 3 hours. Not everybody stays for the whole time, by the way. It's not like, oh man, I got to go to school to this writing sprint. People pop in and out as they want to. And we just have some accountability around writing. And then at noon Central Time, we have some kind of a guest come in. Sometimes it's me. Sometimes we do a hot seat where people are just talking about how to be a better writer, how to structure their writing business, how to structure a book, how to do marketing, all those kinds of things. And we have an active Facebook group and some other things that are part of that. But
That's cool.
yeah, that's pretty much what I do. And I like the idea of doing client work, but also doing something else because there's a lot of cross-pollination between those two sides of it.
Right. And so this community thing, is it like you give feedback to each other in your writing, or you just write? You're just really motivating each other, I guess, right?
Yeah, we don't really give feedback on each other's writing unless people want it.
Right.
One of the things that I do let people do in the group is they can post their stuff in the group and say, hey, I would love some feedback on this. And whoever would like to give feedback obviously can. It's not really primarily a feedback type of group. It's really more of I would just call it a peer support group in many ways.
I like that idea rather than getting feedback, because some people, well, it's don't realize how negative they can be. They don't, you know what I'm saying? And that will turn people off and and activate the fear and want to be writers. I mean, that's my understanding. And that's kind of like the people that I've been involved with. I've met Jeff Goins in the past, but is just supporting each other. That's really what it's all about.
Exactly.
Getting ideas and sharing. That is what Bridget wants to hear. And I'm sure most of your people that you're involved with, it's amazing that people think I'm from that era. You're a little younger than me, but you don't make money as a writer, right? That's what they always say. And for some reason, it was sized, or make you feel bad about yourself, because a lot of people have a great skill for that.
Yeah. But then you can make money writing. I mean, I'm just telling you, you can do it. It's absolutely possible.
It's just practice. And it's, to me, when I say out loud that I'm doing something, I'm going to do it. You know what I'm saying? I should say it, but not out loud, like to the public, but just to share it with a group of people. And I think that's what your community is probably doing. Your things happen in life. You might not finish, but you're gonna do it and move forward. And
absolutely.
So what do you think is the biggest lesson that you learned from this transition? I'm just curious, from being a professor, you finally making money being a writer. What do you think is the biggest lesson you learned?
Well, that's a good question. I would say, well, there's probably many lessons.
Right, that's fine.
but the biggest one that comes to mind, which I think your listeners might be helpful to anybody who wants to transition into having some kind of a business where you're writing, or really anything else. It's that it doesn't have to be this big, dramatic, elaborate type of thing. So when people hear about me transitioning from being a full-time college professor to having a full-time writing business, that seems dramatic. And when I say something like that, the picture that people normally have is that, oh, just one day you stopped being a professor, and then the next day somehow magically you had a full-time income as a writer. And how'd that happen? Then that could never happen to me. Only special people, are able to do those kind of things. And it wasn't that way at all. I had built it up over a number of years, but the promise that I made to my wife in making this transition, and she was really the barometer of this, honestly, because I wanted to make sure she felt very good financially about this, that she felt confident that I could actually do it, because she knows me better than I know myself, probably. And she's a lot smarter than me and all that good stuff. But I said, I want to make sure, my own kind of barometer for success was, I wanted to make sure that at least for 6 months before I left my college job, that my income from ghostwriting and other stuff was equal or greater than my college job income. And that allowed us to put, do the Dave Ramsey thing and put 3 to 6 months of savings into the bank, which we did. And it also validated the concept that, okay, my income from this side thing was steady enough where I could leave my college job and we would be totally fine. And it was. So this was a very measured, intentional kind of thing. It was not all a thing where I was just like, oh, I'm going to up and quit. I hate this job. It wasn't that at all. In fact, I kind of grieved the loss of it. And
I bet,
to be
right?
honest with you, I'm still grieving it a little bit because I really enjoyed what I was doing. I love the people that I work with. I love teaching. Um, so, and there's an aspect of that life that I still do miss, to be honest with you. But it was a very measured thing. I just made sure I had the client work lined up and everything was good so that I can make the transition without
You
it
got
disrupting us financially.
you had a plan, which is so important,
Absolutely.
right? You thought about it. Your wife supported you, and to me, having support is critical because some people try to do stuff by themselves, and that's how you don't have a like you said, the barometer. You need to have that. I love
Yeah, because you can't be objective
right.
when it comes to yourself. I don't think.
And
I think we all sort of act like, oh, I can see reality and I have a clear understanding of myself and the world and everything, but we don't. We're not nearly as objective as we think. That's why you have to have smart people in your life to help you see reality, I think.
right, just like your wife trusts you. I mean, this great relationship right there. I want to meet her. And just like with my
She's way more fun
situation,
than me. You should be interviewing her instead of me.
I will put her on my list. But just like with me, you're like, oh, like I never had. I've had that imposter syndrome a lot. I'm sure I don't know if you had that, but those are
Oh,
my
every day.
clients. These clients are like big people. They're like, Bridget, you know what you're doing. I'm like, I do, but I don't know why I felt that way. Um, but I mean, I think that's just normal.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't think I can talk about the project. My name will be on this book cover, but I don't think the publisher wants us to talk about it yet. There is what I would consider to be a high profile project coming out with a large publisher in quarter 4 of this year. The biggest thing by far I've ever worked on. And every day I feel like I wake up. So I turned in the first draft a couple weeks ago. And it like has a movie tie-in. It's a celebrity driven deal. And every day I wake up and I just go, surely today's the day they're going to wake up and I'm going to hear from the publisher and the client and they're going to go, we made a huge mistake. We don't know why we signed you to this project. This was we're taking you off of this. We're going with somebody who knows what they're doing. And I know that's silly to think that way because I do feel like the book is really good, but I think we all feel that way sometimes.
It's
Maybe that never goes away. I mean, maybe the biggest of celebrities or presidents or whoever, maybe they feel that way too sometimes.
and they just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's normal to feel that way, and I'm so glad I'm being around people that help me. And just like we're part of a group, by the way, guys, a mastermind, and we're learning from each other just by things that we need, I should say, help
Yeah.
with. But
Yeah.
we're getting feedback, like things that we don't even, like you said, we don't even think about, never crossed my mind, and it's so important. You mentioned earlier in the conversation how self-publishing has gotten better and it's a little bit more, it's not as bad, is that the right word? And
Yeah, it's
people,
just way easier to produce something that looks good.
easier now, but people who are self-publishing, they need to realize you do have to have an editor if they're
Oh
writing.
my gosh.
And
Yes.
that's what people aren't doing, and that affects, I think back in the day, self-publishers weren't doing it the proper steps. That makes sense. But
Absolutely.
you just got to learn from others, and I love that you did this. That is you're very brave. I know you don't think you are. But
Well, thank you. I don't really feel brave at all. I just feel like I took little steps sequentially over time to go for what I wanted. I just had a goal, and I just I tend to be kind of a half glass full sort of a person. I guess I got that from my mom. I don't know, but I just sort of think, if so and so can do it, why can't I do it? I mean, they're probably not any smarter than I am. It's just a matter of work and having the right connections and whatever else. So
right. And
I just assume you can do it.
Assume you could do it and get some support, create a plan if that what a change you're going to do. And I think I've been hearing, or I'm not hearing, but reading a lot about this great resignation stuff. I don't know half these people, if they have a plan like you, they're gonna
yeah. Why would you quit and not have a plan? Unless you are just in absolute torment.
It's very I don't know. I can't think of the word. I'm sorry, but it's not right. They're going to regret this down the road, I think. if they
Yeah.
don't have a plan. And you never know, Kent, maybe long ways down the road, you might be being a professor again. You do not know. Right?
You don't know. And it's funny because my wife and I were talking about this just a couple days ago. There was who was it? A friend of ours. I forget who she was talking about. We were talking about this exact thing, that so and so had quit a job, but they didn't have any plan, and they were kind of floundering around. And I said, why don't they just? I mean, everybody's looking for employees today. It's hard for me to understand why you couldn't at least get some type of entry level job just to have some income coming in. And I told my wife, we've Amazon built a huge distribution center a few miles from our house here. So I live in St. Peters, Missouri. It's about 30 miles west of St. Louis, northwest. And I just kind of always thought, if my business tanks or if something happens, I would just go work for Amazon if I had to. I'd go work at McDonald's if I had to. I don't have any problem with that at all. Like, nobody's too good to have
right.
a labor type of a job. And I think if you think you're too good for that, then maybe check your ego a little bit. But, do what you need to do to provide for your family and for yourself. Right. It's like, this is not the time to have a lot of pride.
One of my husband's friends, his father passed away. He had his own business and they sold it. I mean, this is a while ago. For health insurance, he worked at Starbucks full time, right?
Why not?
Why not? He had insurance, and I would do that if I had to.
I would have no problem at all doing that kind of a job.
I can be really good at making coffee and lattes for people.
Yeah, not all things being equal, I would rather have a job where I can work from home.
Correct. Right.
Make more money.
Right.
That kind of a deal. Have more passive income streams. That kind of stuff. But there's so many people who are like, oh, I'm too good for that job, or I could never do that, or whatever. And I don't know. I think just do what you need to do.
Right. I think it is. It's just connecting with those around you. By the way, sorry, I'm a celebrity at my local Starbucks because oh, Bridget's here but that just gets me out because I work from home, but it gets me out of the house a little bit, especially
totally. I get it.
Over COVID. I used to have meetings there with my clients sometimes, but we can't do that right now. But it's just funny how you just, I think connecting with the community and just having support. And I'm not embarrassed to do anything, like you said, labor. I wouldn't be able to drive a truck. I'm not good at that, but I could.
I want to drive an ice cream truck.
That would be interesting, right?
That is my dream job. Someday I'm going to have an ice cream truck. I mean, literally you drive around, you ding a bell all day, you play a song or something, and you hand out ice cream to people. You make them happy. I mean, imagine the kind of job where the second you show up, it makes people happy. Isn't that cool?
That's really what it's about. You're making people happy, helping them with their writing, you help them in the company. Yeah. So you're making an impact. See, you were a pastor and a professor. Now you're taking those skills and putting it down in a different way, a different manner. And I think I find you very inspirational and very positive.
Well, thank you.
And I think you have that foundation with your marriage and your wife. I mean, that is really, really helpful, I think.
Oh, I couldn't have done it without her help. I don't know how somebody does it who's a single parent, or if you're in a marriage or relationship where there's a lot of conflict or other kinds of negative stuff going on. That's just a whole nother layer of what you have to work through. So, I mean, it's hard enough doing it when things are good. So,
correct.
And hats off to anybody who's listening, who's a single parent or who's going through some kind of a domestic issue. Man, if you're making it happen in that sort of a situation, you have my utmost respect.
Right. And that's when they need, they might take a little bit longer to make a shift.
Yeah,
but
that's okay.
Know that, there's people out there that can help you. Those that are listening, they are out there.
Absolutely.
And I've always believed in helping people. I kind of like you, I help as much as I can. And I like making money, but I do like to help people at the same time.
Yeah, I like to give it away too.
Yes, I will do it. Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, the more income you have, the more freedom you have to help other people, which is a big thing that my wife and I love to do.
I think that you guys are great role models. Where can people learn more about you, Kent? How can they connect with you?
So the best place, honestly, is probably checking out the Daily Writer podcast, and you can go to iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast and just search The Daily Writer with Kent Sanders. You can also go to dailywriterlife.com and that is the website for the Daily Writer. But to connect with me, you can always just go to kentsanders.net as well.
That's perfect. And for those listening, I'll have the links in the description. I think this is awesome. You're very great, easy to talk to, and I love your honesty.
Cool.
And
I appreciate that.
Glad
Glad to help.
That's why you're so successful.
Oh, thanks. You're making me blush.
Thanks for listening, everybody.